Hi, I'm Maren and welcome back to my channel, Maren Makes It. Today, I thought it'd be a great chance to tell you guys the story of the first night I slept in my car. It's actually coming up on the 1-year anniversary of this happening, so I figured what better time than this to tell you guys this story. I've talked about sleeping in my car a lot on this channel. I've made several videos on car camping and tips for that and safety tips for that and kind of comparing car and tent camping, but I've never actually told you guys the story of how I first ended up sleeping in my car and what led me to making this choice. So on my road trip, I was planning to drive from Denver to Grand Junction on this day. So that's basically, if you don't know Colorado, you're basically driving from the east side of Colorado through the Rocky Mountains to the west side of Colorado. And Grand Junction is like the last town before you hit Utah. My plan was to do that drive, and it's really not that bad because there's a highway that goes through the mountains, I-70, and I was just supposed to take I-70 all the way over. So I did a full day of work, then I had a doctor's appointment in Denver, and then my plan was to drive on over there. Well, it turns out all that was planned before there was a collapse on I-70. There was a mudslide. I-70 is basically a road that goes through the mountains. So for the most part, a lot of it is like blasted out of the mountainside. So you're kind of driving through a valley like this a lot of the time. And then what happened was there had been a wildfire in previous years in one of these areas in Glenwood Canyon. And so then when you get a big downpour of rain, there's a lot of erosion that occurs because there's no more trees that are keeping all that dirt in place. And I remember this because on the news, people literally got stuck in this tunnel in Glenwood Canyon overnight in their cars. How scary is that? Like, imagine if you don't have food or water or anything in your car. Like, this is why it's so important to have an emergency kit. Well, luckily, I did not get stuck in that, but I figured, okay, it's a week away that I'm going to be doing this drive. Like, I already have this doctor's appointment in Denver. I already have this Airbnb paid for in Grand Junction. I'm just going to count on the fact that they're probably going to, be able to clear this mudslide by the time that I'm driving through there next weekend. Well, lo and behold, that's not the case. And so the next weekend, I-70 is still not fully open. And so what I had to do was take a huge detour through the mountains. Like, huge. When I say it was going to add like 3 hours to a 4-hour drive, like it was going to add 3 hours to a 4-hour drive because the next like available route takes you a really weird way. To make matters worse, you barely have service when you're driving through this area to begin with because you're constantly going like up and down, and cell service is already pretty spotty. And then on top of that, Google Maps did not know where the detours were. So first they kept trying to send me like through just I-70 because they didn't seem to know that that was collapsed. Second, then they tried to send me like over this mountain route. Like it was like a unpaved dirt road, which I'm in the Toyota Corolla. Like obviously I'm not driving on the, unpaved mountain access, like 4-wheel drive required road. And so basically I just had to use an actual paper map to kind of figure out the route. And then that in combination with calling my mom and trying to figure out a route and how I could go. So eventually what we figured out was that I would have to drive first south by a lot, and then I would have to go around Mount Elbert, which is the tallest mountain in Colorado. Then I would have to go through Aspen, and then I could go back up. And basically by doing that, I would avoid the Glenwood Canyon area entirely. And that was basically the detour that I had to go. I don't really understand why this wasn't labeled anywhere. I feel like a lot of people would have been taking this detour, but I know that like big tractor trailers, and I remember this because I saw it on the news, like big trucks were actually being routed through Wyoming on an entirely different highway, and anybody driving like cross country was being advised to do stuff like that because they're not going to make it through these mountain roads. And I, after driving through them, can tell you why that was not recommended. To make matters worse, I had already left Denver in the afternoon, so it's now getting dark and I'm on these windy mountain back roads. First, I ended up going through Leadville, which is the highest incorporated town in the United States at over 10,000 feet of elevation. It's also famous for being a center for the Wild West and for the Colorado Gold Rush. The next place I went through that actually had a name, let's say, was Twin Lakes. And this is sort of the southernmost point of my giant detour that I had to take. Then I would start heading northwest on my route and go past the access points for Mount Elbert, which is actually the highest peak in Colorado. I would say I'm about 96% sure that the giant peak in the background of these photos is Mount Elbert. Although as you're sort of driving around it and with not very much signage or people around, it's a little bit hard to tell. Then I had to go through Independence Pass, which is 12,000 feet high mountain pass. It's July and there was still snow on the ground. There was a group of people actually stargazing there, like setting up their telescopes and stuff, which it was actually really cool. I did get out there, but like the winding mountain pass that I drove up as it was getting dark and there's deers jumping on the road in front of me was terrifying. Honestly, I feels like, you know, one wrong move on the steering wheel and you're just going off the side of the road there. Like, and there's no lights. Like, I mean, aside from the stars, I mean, there's nothing. There's barely like reflectors and like road signs to keep you on the road. I mean, admittedly, there's also no turnoff, so it's kind of hard to get lost. But oh my gosh, there was just like so many hours of nothingness and so many hours of no service. So finally, I make it to Aspen. I have service again, so I'm excited. So I call my mom and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in Aspen. It's already like, you know, 11 p.m. I've had a full day already before this. You know, what do I do? Like, how much further is it to where I'm staying in Grand Junction? So it's like, you can either get there at, you know, 1 or 2 a.m. at this point and keep driving through these windy mountain back roads at night in the dark. Well, or you can stay in Aspen overnight. So I was like, okay, obviously at this point, just cut your losses on the Airbnb that you already paid for the night. Like, you know, it's unfortunate, but your safety is more important than just trying to drive through the night. But so I pull up my phone, start Googling hotels in the area. And I thought I was like making an error first by like what I was typing in. I was so tired. I was like confused because the cheapest thing showing up for me was like $700 a night. And I was like, what? And so I got my mom on the computer too, and she was looking it up and she's like, yeah, there's nothing in Aspen for under, I remember it was $715 a night. And I remember that because my rent in New Mexico before I moved was $750 a month, which was just mind blowing to me that like 1 month and one night could be almost the same price for something. At that point, we ruled out the hotel as an option. Okay, what am I going to do? Should I just keep driving? I mean, what's the alternative? And I was so tired. I was like, I would rather sleep in my car than keep driving at this point. Because I'm more scared that I'm going to get into a car accident from continuing to drive in the dark with deer jumping on the road, not knowing where I'm going, not really having service. I'm more scared about that than I am about sleeping in my car. Just backtrack for a second because I have friends who had car camped, pretty much mostly guys. I also know that they all had bigger cars than me. So I really never thought of car camping as an option for me because one, I didn't think my car was big enough. And two, I thought it was way more scary as a girl than as a guy. And I figured like, it's just not worth the possible risks of doing this. However, I had stayed with a friend in Colorado who was very familiar with car camping. And so like, it had definitely been like a topic of conversation, but I really didn't think it was an option for me at all. Also, it was really hot at this point in the summer still, so when your days are like in the hundreds or the high 90s, it doesn't cool off for a long time. So car camping just didn't sound appealing to me at all. I was still working 2 remote jobs while I was traveling, so I really needed the mental clarity and focus to be able to do my jobs, and a good night's sleep was like kind of a non-negotiable for me at that point. Now, fast forward to I'm in Aspen and I'm just so tired that I'm just basically desperate. Desperate circumstances call for desperate measures and doing things that you wouldn't normally do. So I was like, okay, well, where am I going to park my car to sleep? Because I can't just, you know, park it in a parking lot regularly. My first thought was like, okay, go to like a church because nobody's going to be mad at a church if you know, sleep in your car. Yeah. Well, this is Aspen and I guess this is a huge problem because, you know, everybody thinks it's too expensive there. Because all over the church parking lot says signs of don't park here, don't park here, don't park here, no parking overnight. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is supposed to be the house of God and I can't even park here overnight. Great. Okay, my next thought was I'm going to go to a hospital and I'll park in like the lot where people wait to pick up people because that's like another place that it's not weird for people to be like 24/7 and maybe it will feel like a little bit less sketchy there. Go to the hospital. Guess what? Same signs everywhere. Don't park here overnight. Don't park here overnight. Don't park here overnight. I was getting a little bit freaked at this point because everywhere says no parking. And I'm like, I get that this is a big problem here, but I also don't know what to do at this point. So there's nothing in Aspen for me to really, be able to sleep at. So I keep driving through Aspen, wondering kind of like what's on the far side of Aspen. Like maybe that's a little bit better than the oncoming side, because there's kind of just like one road that it seems to go through there that is the main like through traffic road. So I drive a little bit out of Aspen and I get to a town called Snowmass is what it was called. And there was a skiing carpool lot. So I believe what this is used for is in the wintertime, people would like park here and then carpool up the mountain to go skiing. Kind of like a park and ride kind of situation. And luckily I still had service there. It was that park and ride lot also really appealed to me because there was a gas station like across the street, which was already closed because it was too late for it to be open. But at least there was like floodlights from the gas station and also on the parking lot. So I felt like that and the combination of also having service there was a pretty good combo for me to feel safe there overnight. Then what I did was I didn't have any kind of blinds or window coverings. I think I maybe had one for the front window shield, but I had black garbage bags in the car. And so I just unrolled my windows a little bit, tucked them into that top crack right there, and then I would roll my windows back up because I just really didn't want people to be looking in and see me sleeping there. You know what I mean? Did not have my car set up for car camping at all. I literally just reclined the front, like the driver's seat all the way back, and I just rolled up like a little ball. I'll put in a picture because I did this again in Crater of the Moon's, Idaho. So that's why I'm wearing shorts and a tank top, because it was 100 degrees here over. But picture this same setup, but just me wearing all the layers I own in my car. And because it was cold, it was going to be 43 that night. And I'm coming from Denver where I think it was close to 100 degrees that day. And I'd been really used to that heat. So I was like, 43 is really going to feel cold. I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to fall asleep. But then next thing I knew, I was out. I mean, I was so tired. I think at that point it was just like pure relief and just pure exhaustion. Then next thing I know, like I woke up the next morning and everything was fine. Like I was still alive. I was, maybe not the most well rested, but I was safe. I was really relieved that I had slept, honestly, in my car, especially once I continued on the drive and I realized just how much longer it was going to be to Grand Junction. I just started driving. And it was actually great because when you get in a hotel and you like unpack your car a little bit, you waste a lot of time like bringing things in and out. And this was just me sitting up, turning on the keys and like going across the street to the gas station, using the bathroom, probably like getting a coffee or something. And then I was like, I'm ready to go. Like, we don't even need to do anything. Like, it actually saves kind of time. That is kind of the story of how I was forced to quote unquote rip off the Band-Aid on sleeping in my car. It's kind of funny. It's like once you have an experience like that, you're like, wow, that wasn't so bad. Or like, oh wow, like I could do that again. When you think something's not possible, like sometimes you have to be forced to do it first. And then like when you start to realize that it is possible, it kind of opens up like a whole new range of possibilities for you. Obviously, there are real risks associated with sleeping in your car, and I don't want to downplay that at all with this video, but there is also something of like the human brain. Like when you believe something isn't possible, it won't be. Like it won't happen. I think what I'm really getting at here is that as humans, we all hold on to certain beliefs. Those beliefs kind of guide our actions. So it's kind of like that saying, if you think you can, and if you think you can't, you can't. Either way, you're right, basically. And what that's getting at is like, if you believe that something isn't even possible, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because it makes sense that we wouldn't even try, because if we think that it's not possible, then we're wasting our time by trying it. I mean, nobody wants to waste their time. However, when you then have an experience that challenges that belief, it kind of opens up a whole new range of possibilities, is what I'm trying to say. Ultimately, I made it to Grand Junction. Grand Junction is famous for Colorado National Monument, and I'll put in some pictures here of Colorado National Monument, which is the main thing that I did while I was there. This was one that I really never even heard of, but turned out to be way cooler than I expected, which I always love to find on my travels. Obviously, I'm not sleeping in my car right this second. I'm actually at a house sit in Denver, Colorado, but I figured sitting in my car with the Christmas lights on was the perfect mood to tell the story of the first night that I ever slept in my car. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up down below. It really helps YouTube to suggest this video to other people who might be interested in this content. I hope you guys are having a great summer and having lots of nice summer adventures. As always, thank you so much for watching. Bye, YouTube.